Hi there, welcome back to another video on my channel. Today I'm doing something new. I normally hold my mic in my hand and like talk like this and move it around every now and then when I speak for these videos, but now I'm trying to do the thing I've seen other people do and they like clip it on to something. Normally it's like a wooden spoon or something random. I have an extra bookmark here with me, so I thought I would put it on my bookmark, but if y'all hate this, let me know in the comments down below and I'll stop doing it and get back to regular programming. But anyway, I'm making this video because I noticed something and I want to talk to you guys about it. If you've seen my work with me vlog video that I did, I think 2 weeks ago, you would know that I went to a writing class here in Chicago and the instructor was Cat Falls. And it was a writing class on speculative fiction that kind of also trickled its way into like sci-fi and horror occasionally, but how to approach speculative fiction if you have never written it before, right? And it was a good class. It was informative for sure. And I definitely came back with some techniques that I wanted to try and some new ideas. So that I'm really appreciative of. But I sort of noticed this thing. I have to recognize that my writing journey. Oh, speaking of which, if you don't know, hi, I'm a writer. That's kind of what this channel is kind of meshed into. But yeah, my name's Cassidy. I write books. I write horror and dark fantasy. I have a dark fantasy series with 2 complete novels, and then I have 2 short stories that are horror and they focus more on nostalgic techno horror. I can pull them out for you. I'll just pull out one. This is my most recent one. This is Cursed Images, Cursed Images, Social Media Madness. Excuse me. And this just came out this year, and it is about pop culture and memes from the 2010s. So there you go. But anyway, circling back to this writing class I went to, I noticed that my writing journey is different from a lot of people's in a certain way, at least people I've met. So a lot of times people will go to school and they go to school for writing and then they might get an MFA or something and then pursue classes or try to publish in journals and stuff like that. It's very academic focused. While I do have a master's degree, it is not an MFA or yeah, it's not in writing specifically. I went to school for international studies and I have my master's degree in international studies with a concentration in diplomacy. So my skill sets are very different, but I've been writing as a hobby for as long as I can remember, and now have approached it since the pandemic. I've approached it professionally, and so now this is what I do for my job. I write books and short stories, and it's great. I take these classes every now and then because I think it's a good networking opportunity, and I always want to learn a new trick or a new thing, and I want to see what other people are doing and feeling in the moment. You know what I mean? Because as an indie writer, I know what's going on in the indie community, and we're a lot more freewheeling. But sometimes when you take classes, you get to see what the highbrow people are up to. So every now and then, I infiltrate their area, and I want to see where the temperature's at for them. You know what I mean? Because in the indie community, you can be like as weird as you want, right? But I'm trying to see like what is considered weird for them, especially as they talk about like speculative fiction. And a lot of the times they use speculative fiction to make monsters to relate to some sort of metaphor or overarching theme. Something I think is a good example of this is Our Wives Under the Sea, is a great piece of speculative fiction. I would say chlorine, but chlorine leans more to horror in my opinion, even though it doesn't I don't think it must be called that, but chlorine is more horror to me. But if you want to read a true speculative fiction, I think Our Wives Under the Sea does a good job of personifying grief in a supernatural way. So that being said, I'm trying to see what's going on. But the one thing I do want to talk about, I know I ramble, but the one thing I do want to talk about is a reaction from the other people in my class that I found to be very interesting. And it is not a one off thing, it's something I've really noticed in these spaces where people are paying to take writing classes. I, again, have limited interactions with these people, so I can't pretend to know their backgrounds completely. But from what I understand, the people who take these classes don't already have things published like I do. A lot of them tend to be people who are aspiring writers or people who just graduated from an MFA program or who are currently in an MFA program and they're working on their own things, but they don't have this experience about putting things out in the world just yet. And I think based on what I've observed, that a lot of them are afraid to put themselves out there because of probably this like fear of rejection, which again, it's hard to get over, especially young people nowadays have this immense fear of rejection, and it's really hard for people to be vulnerable in that way. Their questions they ask the instructors are always, or at least in the case for my last class, how like the question that stuck out for me, someone asked, how do you do speculative fiction in a way that's not too much or too excessive or too weird, right? And given what I just told you about how in the indie spaces we are not afraid to be weirdos, right? Like a lot of my friends write horror specifically in the most exaggerated ways possible, or they do comedy horror. Like every now and then I dabble into comedy horror, and a lot of them do it the same way I do, where they just take a ridiculous premise and then run with it. Like I have a friend named Damian Casey who writes what he calls bubblegum bizarro, and it is zany horror stories with like the wildest premise. So I think one book I talked about on here for him was like 28 Days Sassier, or 28, yeah, and it was about Bigfoot. He has Bigfoot stories, he has like cryptid, oh, a Mothman story. He does cryptid theme stories, or he also pokes fun at niche communities that he may or may not be a part of. So that kind of stuff, right? That is weird, but there's a place for weird, and weird is fun. And I always appreciate it when I come across it. So for me, it when someone asks like, how do I do this in a way that's not too much? I don't know. It catches me off guard. I'm like, oh, so you haven't written before, which sounds very mean and insensitive, and I recognize that. But it gets to the center point of people aren't really allowing themselves to be weird, to be bad, to be cringe, to be embarrassing, especially when it comes to their art. And that is a huge problem. And that's like the crux of what I want to get at this video. And it only took me like 10 minutes to do so. But yeah, you have to allow yourself to make bad art. And like the response that our instructor gave was basically like, we'll have beta readers, like have people that you trust or other people read your work, and they will give you feedback on what works and what doesn't work. And then you can take it and be like, okay, I'll keep this, get rid of this, blah, blah, blah. And that's just part of the natural writing process. But I don't know if people ask these questions with the intention of being deep or having some sort of like revolutionary answer. There's no formula to good writing. And I think people don't realize that. And again, my journey is really different because I assume when you go through writing courses in college, they do tell you that there's a right way and a wrong way to do things, right? You're graded on your assignments. You are putting things out there to be better and get editing feedback, sure, but you're also supposed to be developing your own voice and style at the same time. And I think sometimes when you're in this mindset of I need to get a good grade for something versus like I need to create something, it really is something to your brain where you don't even have a frame of reference anymore for like who you are and what you want to say, which is the most important part of being an artist or being a creative. And you might take a long time to get to that point, you know what I mean? But it's still part of the process, and you're going to mess up. you're going to you're going to make something that you're going to be like, "Ah, geez." I'm lucky enough to be born at the time I was born because I'm a zillennial, so I'm a baby millennial basically. I was born in 95. So I'm a very young millennial. And we had internet at the time where people could post whatever they wanted as a young person, and it would be cringe and weird, but there wasn't much social ramification for it. Teenagers nowadays, they still post weird stuff, but there's a lot of social like pushback to what they say, more so than when I was young. And another beautiful thing about being millennial or being in proximity to millennial culture is that millennials don't feel any shame. Like in general, like millennials are freaks, and I kind of love that. Sometimes it's like sometimes the cringe is warranted with some millennial cultural aspects. Sometimes it is like, girl, what are you doing? But for the most part, people aren't afraid to wave their freaky flags. You know what I mean? They're like putting it out there, and they are unabashedly like proud of who they are and like the fandoms they represent and stuff like that. And I say that because I was put in a situation when I was a middle schooler writing love poetry on the internet, putting my whole government name on that stuff. And you could probably find it on the internet now if you really wanted to search for it. But I had my first little boyfriend at like 12, and I was writing love poems about him, and they were cheesy and horrible. And looking back on it, like there was a time probably where I would have been embarrassed about that stuff, but I'm not. Like I'm not anymore. I was somebody who always wanted to be a writer, and that was something I did to express myself. I was an avid reader, and somebody who wanted to write and who wanted to write since childhood. So it's only natural that I would be inclined to create things. And not everything I made would be good, you know? I wrote poetry, I wrote songs. I even tried as a teenager, I thought I was going to be a rapper, and I wrote some raps. And they were not good. They were not good. Luckily, I didn't post those. But the love poetry, yes, is up there. And did that boy deserve any of my love poems? No. Truthfully, no. But hey, you live and you learn. But like, because I went through that phase of like, I'm F it, I'm just going to do it. And I'm still actively in that F it, I'm just going to do it phase. I don't have these reservations to try new things. Like, girl, I have mushy middle school love poetry on the internet. That's already, the bar is already in hell. I can only go up from here, you know? And yeah, I don't know. I just think that's like important to have. And I think it's important for people to realize they need that step. They need that step to be a bad artist. They need that step to be a bad writer. Like it's okay if your grammar's not perfect. It's okay if it's your first draft looks like shit. Like it's okay, that happens to the best of us. That's what a first draft is for. That's even what a first book is for sometimes. I think there's so much pressure because people have this like idealized version of being a writer in their head where their first book instantly becomes a New York Times bestseller, and it's like they're a debut genius, or they're, you know, they're young and they're already coming out the gate swinging. I'll tell you, that does not happen to the majority of writers. I have peers that I have known in the indie community that blew up on TikTok and then got picked up after they blew up on TikTok, and now they're on the New York Times bestsellers list. But that didn't happen until like their eighth book. You know what I mean? So you can't have this fear of failure if you're going to be an artist or a writer. Like you really can't. And that's something like I really want to talk to like my peers about, because even in like, you know, I mentioned that I used to be part of this writers group. We haven't met in a while, so I don't know if it's still a thing. But again, I'm the only one for a while that was like self-publishing and putting their stuff out there. Now I have another peer in that group that's like publishing stuff, and I'm really proud of her for it. But a lot of them don't, and they keep perpetually working on pieces, or they're working on being an editor and working on somebody else's stuff and doing all that. But it gets to a point where you just have to try. And not everybody has to self-publish, but you have to at least finish the manuscript, or like, you know what I mean, finish that and try to get it out there. Like query, you're going to face rejection. The truth of life is that you will always face rejection, like online, in person, in your own like friends and family groups, and even professionally. Like there is no way that you will not experience rejection at some point in time. You cannot let that stop you. To quote a Cinderella story with the Hilary Duff in it, you can't let the fear of striking out keep you from playing the game. Changed my life. But yeah, like you need to take time to do that, because if you don't make anything, then you're never going to know, right? If you're afraid of making something bad, you're never going to try. And then also, you're never going to grow. Like in 10 years from now, I might be looking back at the work I'm doing and be like, geez, that sucks. But that's okay. That's like an indicator of growth. That's like what you want. You know what I mean? Some people, especially writers that have been around in like the past decade that used to put stuff out in the 2010s, a lot of them end up taking that stuff down because it's just like of the time period and would be very inappropriate to publish today. But that's okay too. Like people grow, and if you recognize that, that's great. You can do what you want with your work. You can keep it up, take it down. whatever. But you can't get to the good stuff if you're not willing to dig through the crap. And that's like the point of this video. I'm just literally rambling on because I want to like pose this to writers or aspiring writers, like just do the damn thing, you know? And I know it's easier said than done, especially for a lot of folks, but for me it turns into this thing where I can't not do it anymore. Like I gave up writing for a couple years in grad school because I was so focused on like practical projects and papers and essays and all that. And don't get me wrong, that's still writing, and I still really enjoy research papers and stuff like that too. But I just keep falling back into it. You know what I mean? That's all I think about. Like if I'm not even tactically writing on the laptop, I'm thinking about it in my head. I'm thinking about the stories that I'm working on. I'm really thinking about it all the time, and I'm working through things in my head, even at like 11 o'clock at night, right? Sometimes I do it while I'm having a conversation with somebody else, and that's really rude, and I shouldn't be doing that. But it just doesn't stop. You know what I mean? And I really am feel sad for folks who have that fear and are like letting that prevent them from actually putting their work out there, and instead will tell themselves they're doing something by taking like a gazillion expensive writing courses, and then at the end of the day still have nothing to show for it. You can take all the writing courses you want, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing to take writing I take writing courses when I can afford to do so. I think that's great. I think everybody should try to hone their craft and get better. But if you still do all that and you focus all your time on these classes and then you don't put any work to your actual product, it's 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 just wasteful. It's just wasteful at this point. And I think a lot of people underestimate the value of hands-on experience because it's easy to talk about writing and what works and what doesn't work, but then when you try it yourself, it's a whole other ballgame. Like I've learned so many things by just being hands-on with my craft over the past couple years than I have in like I, I took a creative writing. I took 2 or 3 creative writing courses in undergrad, and those were fun, don't get me wrong, but I've learned so much more having hands-on experience and putting my work out there and getting feedback than I ever did in a classroom setting. And that's just kind of how it is. I've learned more about the business of writing, being hands-on and being my own boss and kind of having this like entrepreneurial indie author thing going on here than I ever would have just reading about things, right? I have a deeper understanding for it, and I have a deeper understanding for like what it's like to market yourself online and connect with your readers. I have a deeper understanding of what it's like to really convey a story to somebody and have them feel it and experience it rather than just I I don't know, just pick it up for entertainment for 2 hours. You know, I'm so thankful that some of my stories have really stuck with folks, and that is something that's like the high, right? Like that's what you chase after as a creative, right? Having that emotional impact on somebody. That's what it's all about. You know what I mean? And you can't do that if you're perfect because people aren't perfect. You're not going to write the perfect book. That doesn't exist. But if you want to write something real and honest, then you have to just stop with this like protective bubble you're in where you don't show your veins. And that's the whole point of being creative, is to literally put your heart on your sleeve and put it out there and be it, you know? And that's again something that I feel like you get it or you don't get it. And I just want more people to not be scared. And I understand that now is like such a scary time, not just with like not just with our current reality, how you're constantly perceived online and you don't get a break, and even your personal private moments are publicized. That is a whole psychological thing in itself. But even like politically right now, a lot of people are afraid to stand out, say something, speak up, just in general. But like this is that what's needed now more than ever is people being this way, people being authentic, people being who they are, even if it's messy, even if your writing's messy, it's still you. And I just think that because writing is so personal, inevitably it is so personal, that there are a lot of people who are scared and nervous to put themselves out there. Authors are notoriously like stereotyped as being anxious individuals, and I'm clocking my own tea because I'm a very anxious individual. But I am so lucky that I just have this personality and I've always been this way. And I think whoever did that, I thank them so much for that, where I don't really care, genuinely don't care what other people say or think about me. I never have. I was a weird girl. I was a very weird girl. I was always a weird girl. I would always do whatever I wanted, even if it wasn't necessarily like going to help me fit in. I just marched to the beat of my own drum and I was confident about it, even if I was weird. And then I would get weird looks and not understand why until much older. But I was alive in a time period where that was still a option for us weird girls. And so I don't know. I'm thankful that I have that's not as big of a hurdle for me to overcome as some other folks. But if you are that way, I'm like trying to make this video to reach out to you and say like, "Hey, that's okay. Like it's okay to be scared, but the best things in life happen when you are scared and you do them anyway." Like that's when the best stuff happens. And guess what? The worst thing that can happen is like nobody reads your book. Or the worst thing that can happen is some people read your book and they hate it and they write really mean reviews. Okay, but that is going to help you find your like your that's going to help you find your people. You know what I mean? Like you might not be for everybody. I am most certainly not for everybody. A lot of my short story collections have very niche references for people who are like chronically online millennials, basically. So if you are not in an age demographic that understands these references, my books won't be for you. You will not enjoy them. I hope you still do, right? I hope you still read the story regardless, but you might be missing out on like some context, right? I totally recognize that, but I do it anyway. You know what I mean? Some people might be like, "Oh, you're dating your work." Okay, well that's the point. Like with these pop culture references, you might be dating your work. Yes, that is the point. I am celebrating this time in existence where things were weird. And I'm celebrating the past, but also making it scary. Like that's my bread and butter. And that is something that goes against traditional advice that people give you, where they say, don't include that kind of stuff. Don't include specific tech references. Don't include certain pop references because it dates your work and might be less enjoyable for people in the future. That my short stories are time capsules for me. So I'm breaking the rules doing that. And you should break the rules. You should break the rules doing whatever you want because it's your point of view and your frame of reference. Like there's no formula to being a great artist. A lot of the great artists or great writers were kind of rule breakers in themselves to a certain degree, right? So yeah, this is just me like rambling and ranting on about how y'all we need bad art, we need bad writing, we need bad stuff again. And like, I'm not saying bad as in like, okay, write the most offensive thing that you can think of. No, that's not what I mean. I'm just saying like be you because we need that. We need more authenticity. We need less like perfectly curated SEO marketable books. We need stuff with soul, man. We I don't need to read the same fantasy plot line written 30 different ways. I don't need to see the same romance trope written 40 different ways. If you want to do that, if you want to write for the formula and get money, girl, I guess you do you. Just fine. But like that shouldn't be the goal because it's going to eat you up inside. When you live inauthentically and you live to try to please this like obscure reader or person in your head that isn't even concrete, like you will get ulcers because you'll be stressed and unhappy. Trust and belief from personal experience. Like when you live to please somebody else, whether that be the literary community or just your mom or somebody, if you choose to suppress that part of you, you will be upset emotionally, physically. That might turn into health issues. Please don't do that. Please just be messy and unique and you and put that on the page, please. If this is what you want to do, or make a painting and make crayon doodles, make zines. You want to see bad art? I wanted to make a zine because I think they're cool. And this was me practicing. Look at this. I literally just like I didn't even do anything with it really. I was just like playing around with doodles and crayons. You know what I mean? And I'm proud of this. Like even if it's literally nothing, like go girl, give them nothing. But it was fun and it made my brain happy for like 5 minutes. And look, thank you for listening. I had the intent of writing something in here and I didn't. But at least I tried. You know what I mean? So please just go out and try. I love you. This is not, I'm going to stop yelling at you now because I've said everything I want to say and my hair is crazy. So yeah, thank you for listening to me and hearing me out. If you liked what I have to say, please like this video, comment down below, share it with a friend, and subscribe to the channel. Please, please, please. That would help me out a lot today. And I hope you have a really good rest of your day too. And I'm sorry for yelling at you, but it's tough love. And I love you and you need it. Okay. Thanks so much for watching. And until next time, thanks. Bye.